What's the absolute hardest line you or another player has ever said in a campaign? Drop them in the comments below. Today's sponsor is History of Heroes. Come witness the backstories of up-and-coming adventurers, hand-illustrated and dramatically narrated by the Forever DM, from before they made their first appearance in the best available. Link in the description. My father bled for your father. Now you will bleed for me. My rogue with a dagger to the prince's throat. He betrayed my party after asking for our help. My father was a soldier in the king's army and died in battle. My barbarian who, through relentless rage, had been downed 3 times previously, threw his warhammer at the big bad evil guy just as a lightning bolt was coming down upon him and said, "I will burn so that this realm may see the way." And after being downed with his final breath, he used his robe of stars to enter the astral plane, where he had recently left his perished mother to rest. When my character finally got to kill Strahd, who had killed his wife, he plunged the sunlight blade into Strahd's chest and said, "Just as I thought, nothing there." Playing an old family man gnome who had been frozen in time for 1,000 years or so, meaning all of his family had died. One of the party members who was being spooky possessed by an evil god or something, trying to walk back into the tunnel we had just barely escaped with our lives. She was sure that her dead boyfriend was in there and needed to be freed. It was the evil god projecting himself as her dead boyfriend. So my senile old gnome barbarian rogue grapples her and shouts, "I've lost one family already. I will not lose another." I played Irina in Curse of Strahd. In the final fight, I rolled a nat 20 on my smite. Before he exploded in a radiant burst, I said, "Strahd, for the last time, you're not my type." That's like the most 80s line I've ever heard, and I love it. Played a paladin who was slowly being corrupted by a cursed weapon. As time went on, he began to project the murderous desires of the weapon as his god's will. At the end of a battle, he pulled a man close and, while pressing a spear through the man's chest, whispered, "I have freed you of your sins." Ongoing Curse of Strahd campaign. My second character is the sister of my first who has come to find her. She arrived, woke up, in the place she died, with some of her memories, which means she knows her sister died sacrificing herself. I chose to take an AO to protect our bard while everyone else ran. It ended up killing me. Our Cleric passed a perception check and had an option to save one person, and he chose the barbarian. The whole party knows this. Our Cleric said, "No offense, but I wish your sister was here instead of you." I responded with my character leaning in, arms crossed, voice low and barely restrained, "And whose fucking fault is that?" After catching and beating to near death a monarch who did nothing but steal and murder the peasantry, my paladin had the following monologue. "You asked who I was, Baron." Fixes rope into a noose. "I am judge." Loops the noose around his neck. "Jury." Throws rope over a chandelier. "And executioner." "Hoist." The best part? He asked her who she was when she broke into his library, and she had responded, "Judge, jury, and executioner," before beginning to beat him utterly senseless. The party was fighting a diviner who had been one step ahead of them the entire time. They were chasing her through a magic academy, and they finally caught up to her. She was holding one of their friends hostage, and the monk made a clever move to close a huge gap and get in her face with a stunning strike. The problem was, she was already prepared for it. The wizard the monk attacked was a vision, and their friend had already been turned into a bodak. she dropped the illusion and put up a spherical wall of force, trapping the isolated monk in close quarters with his dead friend turned bodak. For full context, they previously fought a 4v2 against a pair of bodaks a few days prior. One player died, mostly because he stayed in melee. She looked at him through the wall of force and said, "Slow, just like your friend." We had a Kobold Barbarian who multiclassed into Oath of Glory Paladin to reflect his past as a gladiator, thriving off the crowd. So, there they were, in the Underdark, fighting an undead bone bullet. The thing was putting up a good fight, dealing serious damage to the party. And then this 3-foot muscle lizard steps up, rages, wild magic barbarian, rolls a radiant blast of light from his chest before shouting, "I am the god made flesh and wrath made manifest!" Before blasting a hole through it with the beam, and then proceeding to tear it in half with his bare hands. Crit on the unarmed attack roll. I am in charge of traffic safety, building safety, hazardous item safety, and firearm safety. But the one thing I am not in charge of is your safety. Local safety officer themed wizard preparing to cast a spell that would flatten the thieves we were currently fighting. Our party was in a lead cultist's house when we heard a noise upstairs. We rushed up to find a couple of thieving cultists in one of the rooms. Scuffle ensues, trademark. They take the worst of it. My barbarian grabs one by the lapels, picks him up, and slams him into the wall, shouting, "Who are you working for?" Unfortunately, the slam was a little too hard, and I killed him before I even asked the question. Our rogue had the other cultist and asked them the same. Snarky reply. So I took the body of the one I killed, jammed my hand through the back of his crushed skull, took him over to the other thief, and worked him like a big puppet. "Oh yes, please keep being a smartass and don't tell them what they want to know. It's so lonely being dead. And I miss you, buddy. See you in a little bit." He told us what we wanted to know. Spoiler alert, the buddies were reunited anyway. Never trust a crew of murder hobos. Recently, my players were in a dungeon where Acererak was the main boss. They were fighting a death knight and getting their asses kicked. As a Hail Mary, the Cleric, who had single-digit HP, chose to use their divine intervention and request their god to smite the death knight. They didn't make the roll. The Death Knight, up next in initiative, said, "The only god here is Acererak," and crushed the Cleric's skull, killing them. The rest of the party had to flee for their lives, leaving the Cleric behind to bleed out in the dark of the dungeon. Potential plot thread to make a good guy go bad? As a DM, when I was introducing my villain, "You think that you can fight us just because you defeated our weakest soldier? Ha! Foolish! Allow me to demonstrate the error of your ways." Just no. And it was directed at me, the DM. Players were traveling through my homebrew version of the 9 Circles of Hell. In the circle named Ambitiosus, souls are doomed to wander a harsh desert plain hunting a supermassive walking fortress. If they, in only their rags, manage to actually scale the mountain-sized legs of the wandering castle, they can drag some of the few who slumber there back into the desolate wastes to take their spot. Till, of course, the cycle repeats and a wandering soul finds their way there and throws them off, of course. My party had been through hell, and desperately needed a long rest before confronting the lord atop this wandering castle. 3 of them had no problem yeeting some of the peaceful slumberers off the ledge. But that left us with a rogue monk slowly losing his boyish innocence all campaign, a chaotic good paladin who often put himself in the party at massive risk to always do the right thing. Both players would surely die soon without the rest. Paladin staunchly refused. In the middle of his moral stand, the rogue monk, holding on to what remains of his innocence, reluctantly throws a soul off the edge. So I say, the soul's desperate scream disappears into the clouds below. Okay, Rogue Monk, you crawl into the spot left No. Brief moment of party confusion as we all slowly realize what's happening. Tears in my eyes. I walk to the next spot. I throw that soul off the cliff too, and stare daggers at the paladin while I do it. Then I climb into the second spot and rest. He absolutely put to bed the paladin's good boy bullshit at the cost of his last shred of innocence. Our barbarian, while being stuck on a dragon that was flying away trying to escape the party, he said, "Ride or die!" Did one last swing with his claws, crit. Killed the dragon at 200 feet height. He stayed on top of the dragon as it plummeted to the ground, roared his final farewell, and raged. Took half damage because of rage and half damage again because he landed on the dragon. The DM rolled shit on fall damage, and he had a single-digit HP left. Eberron campaign. We para-dropped him, more or less, into a fort in Xen'drik, where drow slaves were being held by dragon-marked interests. My Velinar rune knight Volsan, whose ancestor spirit demands that no elf of any kind ever be held in bondage, had been an absolute terror to the garrison. Enlarged, wielding a cursed blade wrenched from an undead giant. He had systematically obliterated everyone who came within range of him. As the GM activates one of the last soldiers standing, they comment, "This man is a living nightmare!" Volson, unrestrained by the fourth wall. "It's not too late to wake up." As I recall, that was the only soldier wise enough to surrender, too. There's a witch queen, probably a sorcerer mechanically, concentrating on a big ritual, standing over a huge cauldron and focusing the magic as they throw innocent victims into it as sacrifices. It was my warlock's job to balance the universe. Not perfectly, just to stop law and chaos from getting too extreme. She tried to fireball us. I hit her with a counterspell and just waved the "Oh no you didn't" finger at her. On my turn, I yelled, "You have violated the balance!" Like it was some kind of accusation from a judge finding her guilty, and used Grasp of Hadar from across the cauldron to pull her into it. Oh, that's evil. My character was a bit of an iconoclast. It was in open rebellion against the gods by the end of the campaign. Having successfully defeated the big bad evil guy and captured the life core, supposedly the cradle of the original positive energies in the material plane, she harnessed its powers, with the party's blessings of course, and became a living god. "I am the Dark Wish, bringer of night and embracer of all, and I declare the prime material's independence. Woe be to any would-be god that would stand in our way!" And thus began the Holy War, where a single world would rise up against the entire multiverse and win. Unrealistic? Certainly. Kinda cringe? Oh, absolutely. But in that moment, we all felt so fucking cool, baby! One of my party members, after we recently deposed the evil chancellor who allowed a tiefling genocide to occur a few years prior, was actually surprised to still see blatant systemic racism occurring throughout the city. He commented on it, and my poor tiefling trickery cleric had to be serious for once, stating, "When it comes to a problem like this, it's not removing the head of the snake that'll fix things. In fact, removing a snake's head is a great way to reveal the Hydra." We were playing a Pirates of the Caribbean-inspired 5th edition game where we were given command of a boat by a British Commodore. Among the crew was a sorcerer reskin who carried bombs rather than spells, and me, the fearless, magicless ranger, who was named Captain. At some point, our vessel was raided by mer creatures, huge crab people who tried to drag us into the sea in their oversized pincers. Now, all of us were grappled solid except for our gunslinger up on the mast. That's when I took out my last remaining pistol. The players laughed a bit and asked what I was going to do with a single flintlock in this situation. "Hey, sorcerer! You still have bombs on you, right?" The boat exploded. And that's what we call scorched earth, everybody. Teensy bit of backstory here. Over the course of the campaign, my character had become an archfey. Politically, at least, we were treating the difference in power as something he'd grow into eventually. One of my character's quirks was that he would never introduce himself by his proper name, mostly because he was worried about what someone might do if they had it. So there we were, end of the campaign, fighting Asmodeus. The wizard guaranteed a successful feeble mind through wish shenanigans. My character took full advantage of dummy Asmo to plane shift him to the elemental plane of water, where he'd drown and be sent back to the hells. Just before sending him, I said, "When they ask who killed you, it was the Archfey Ipsi Duskrin, Prince of Twilight." Part of feeble mind is that the victim can't understand language while under the effects. So my Archfey name-obsessed character willingly gave his full name to the Asmodeus and is still living his best life, consequence-free. The line itself is maybe kind of trite, but with context, it's my favorite flex and probably will be for many years. My paladin of Lathander was interrogating a young necromancer who was wearing a cursed headband, which was actually a lich's newest experiment in phylactery tech. The headband corrupted the wearer, imposing the lich's personality on him, making the young guy even more evil. So this wannabe villain was going on and on about how he will rule the universe, yada yada blah blah blah. My paladin, who couldn't even punch the little shit without breaking his oath, rolled a total of 25 in a persuasion check and said, "You speak of power, but you don't even have sovereignty over your own head. Without free will, there can't be power." The first arc's big bad evil guy was a somewhat relatable villain. She used an earthquake to destroy part of a town, but the town had made an actual festival out of hunting her people's herd animals for sport. In the mini-module as written, the earthquake sinks a small island before the players return. All the people left on the mainland have left for other locations. The players still needed to interact with the big bad evil guy for other goals and plot. Well, my players went to confront the big bad. They wanted a peaceful resolution between the big bad's people and the village. But all they really understood was that the island sank. They knew the town seemed empty, but I don't think they fully processed that the place was flat out abandoned. So they talked to the big bad, trying to open negotiations, and the players offered to broker a peace with the town. I swear, I was just trying to, A, make it clear that the town was abandoned, so their offer was moot, and B, stay in character. The words that came out of my mouth were, "I've taken care of the town," casually, with a shrug. NBD, let's focus on other plot stuff, right? No biggie, right? My players reacted as if I had just delivered the single best badass, heartless villain line ever. Hey everybody, Brian Von VA checking in after the vid. Make sure to leave a like, subscribe, ring that bell, and let us know down in the comments below. What's the absolute hardest line that you or another player has ever said in a campaign? And of course, if you want to help support the channel, make sure to join our membership program. It keeps the lights on and the videos are flowing. We love you all. Please be safe, happy, and healthy, and we'll see you next time. Toodaloo for now.